In the year 980 CE, in a small village near Bukhara, a child was born who would change the course of human knowledge forever. His name was Abu Ali al-Hussein, Ibn Abd Allah Ibn Sina. The West would know him as Avicenna, but to understand his story is to witness something extraordinary, a mind so restless, so insatiable, that even 1,000 years later, we're still catching up to his genius. This is not just the story of a brilliant scholar. This is the story of a man who couldn't stop learning, couldn't stop questioning, couldn't stop pushing the boundaries of what was humanly possible. A man whose mind, quite literally, refused to rest. By age 10, Ibn Sina had memorized the entire Qur'an. Let that sink in for a moment. While most children his age were learning basic arithmetic, this boy had committed thousands of verses to memory in classical Arabic. But memorization wasn't enough for him. It never would be. His father, a government official in Bukhara, recognized something unusual in his son. He brought tutors to their home, scholars of mathematics, philosophy, and Islamic law. Ibn Sina devoured their knowledge like a man dying of thirst. By 13, he had exhausted his teachers, every single one of them. They had nothing left to teach him. Think about that. At 13 years old, he had learned everything the scholars of Bukhara could offer. So what does a teenage genius do when he's surpassed all his mentors? He teaches himself. At 16, Ibn Sina turned his attention to medicine, not because someone told him to, but because he was curious. He read every medical text he could find, works by Hippocrates, Galen, the great physicians of Greece and Rome. But reading wasn't enough. He began treating patients, applying what he'd learned, experimenting, observing. And here's where the legend truly begins. The Sultan of Bukhara fell gravely ill. The royal physicians tried everything. Nothing worked. The Sultan was dying, and the greatest doctors in the land were helpless. Someone remembered the teenage scholar. In desperation, they called for Ibn Sina. He examined the Sultan. He diagnosed the illness. He prescribed treatment, and the Sultan recovered. Imagine the scene. A 16-year-old boy saving the life of a king when experienced physicians had failed. The Sultan was so grateful that he opened the royal library to Ibn Sina, one of the finest collections of books in the Islamic world. For anyone else, this would have been the pinnacle of their career. For Ibn Sina, it was just the beginning. Ibn Sina couldn't stay still. Politically, the Islamic world was fragmenting. Dynasties rose and fell, borders shifted. And Ibn Sina moved with the chaos, serving different rulers, always writing, always studying. He became a vizier, a high government official. He advised princes and sultans, but even as he navigated the dangerous world of medieval politics, his mind was elsewhere. At night, when others slept, Ibn Sina wrote. He wrote by candlelight, his pen moving across parchment for hours. When he got stuck on a philosophical problem, he wouldn't give up. He'd go to the mosque, pray, and return to his work. Sometimes inspiration came, sometimes it didn't, but he never stopped trying. His students described a man who worked constantly. When friends urged him to rest, to take a break, he would respond, "I prefer a short life with width to a narrow one with length." And his life was anything but narrow. He wrote over 450 works. Think about that number. Treatises on philosophy, medicine, mathematics, astronomy, alchemy, psychology, music, poetry. Some were short essays. Others were massive encyclopedias. His masterpiece, the Canon of Medicine, was over 1 million words long. It systematically organized all medical knowledge of his time, added his own observations and discoveries, and created a framework for understanding the human body that would dominate medical education for 600 years. 600 years. European universities were still using Ibn Sina's Canon as their primary medical textbook in the 1600s, long after his death. His words were teaching doctors how to heal. But medicine was just one chamber of his mind. Ibn Sina grappled with the deepest questions humans can ask. What is existence? What is the nature of the soul? How do we know what we know? He wrote the Book of Healing, not a medical text, but a massive philosophical encyclopedia covering logic, physics, mathematics, and metaphysics. He developed what became known as the floating man thought experiment, exploring consciousness and self-awareness in ways that philosophers still debate today. Imagine a person suspended in air, deprived of all sensory input. No sight, no sound, no touch. Would they still know they exist? Ibn Sina argued yes, proving, in his view, that consciousness exists independently of physical sensation. Modern neuroscientists are still exploring questions Ibn Sina posed 1,000 years ago. He bridged the philosophy of ancient Greece with Islamic thought, influencing not just Muslim scholars, but Christian and Jewish philosophers throughout medieval Europe. Thomas Aquinas, one of Christianity's greatest theologians, engaged extensively with Ibn Sina's ideas. Ibn Sina's life was not easy. He lived through wars, political upheavals, imprisonment. At one point, he was jailed by a ruler who feared his influence. He escaped, disguised as a wandering Sufi mystic, and continued his work in another city. His lifestyle took its toll. The late nights, the constant travel, the stress of political intrigue. His health began to fail. A student once found him ill and urged him to slow down. Ibn Sina refused. Even as his body weakened, his mind kept working. In 1037, at the age of 57, Ibn Sina died in Hamadan, in present-day Iran. On his deathbed, he reportedly freed his slaves and gave away his possessions to the poor. Some say he knew every piece of knowledge available to humanity at that time. Whether that's literally true or not, it captures something essential about the man. He had tried to know everything, to understand everything, to never stop learning until his very last breath. Today, over 1,000 years later, Ibn Sina's legacy endures. In Uzbekistan, statues honor him as a national hero. His face has appeared on currency. Universities and hospitals bear his name. The European Space Agency named a crater on the moon after him. But his real legacy isn't in monuments or honors. It's in the spirit of inquiry he embodied. Ibn Sina lived in an age where knowledge was fragmented, where books were rare and precious, where learning required traveling hundreds of miles to find a teacher. Yet, he refused to let those obstacles stop him. He showed us what a human mind can achieve when it refuses to accept limits, when it stays curious, when it never stops asking why and what if. In an era of specialization, where we're told to focus narrowly, Ibn Sina reminds us of the power of the polymathic mind, the Renaissance man before the Renaissance, the universal scholar who believed all knowledge was connected. His was a mind that refused to rest. And in that restlessness, he gave us a gift that transcends cultures, religions, and centuries. The reminder that human curiosity has no boundaries, that learning has no endpoint, that the pursuit of knowledge is among the noblest of human endeavors. Narrator. Ibn Sina once wrote, "The world is divided into men who have wit and no religion, and men who have religion and no wit." He dedicated his life to proving that wisdom and faith, science and spirituality could coexist in a single brilliant mind. And that mind, it still speaks to us across the centuries, still teaches us, still inspires us, because some minds, even in death, refuse to rest.